So yeah, this is an interview with CJ Daugherty.
Daugherty, yeah, you can pronounce it anyway.
Daugherty.
Exactly.
Whatever. She's the author of the Nightingale series of books, and I think your latest one, Fracture, is coming out in August.
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So that'll be quite exciting.
Yes.
Is that the last book?
No, it's the third. There's going to be 5 of them,
okay.
So that's the third of 5.
And a 5. Cool.
Cool. Yeah. I don't know, I had this conversation recently with somebody. Phivology? We don't know. There's no word for it.
Cool. So, firstly, just a quick fire thing. How would you describe your books in just words, adjectives?
Thrilling, dangerous, exciting, romantic.
Good. So, you're the author of books for young adult novels. Obviously, with the recent, I don't want to bring up Twilight, but obviously when you're talking about young adult novels, you have to bring up those sorts of books. Do you think it's kind of difficult to get recognised in this sort of writing? Because there are a lot of writers that are writing these sorts of books, and when I go into Waterstones, I look in the young adult section, and it's just gargantuan, just the range of books.
Yeah.
So do you find it is quite difficult to get recognised?
I think it's a slow process, but it's not difficult. It's a matter of patience. So your first book comes out, and I think this is a universal experience for writers who don't have those huge, gigantic, crazy deals that you occasionally just find splashed everywhere, but those are very rare. So if you just have a normal book deal, when your book comes out, nobody's ever heard of you, and you think, it's going to be in bookstores, I'll be famous. Yeah. And it's in bookstores, but as you say, along with a million other books, it takes time.
Yeah.
So the first 5 readers who like it will seriously tell all their friends. People just do. You don't even know that you're doing it, but you do it. I'm sure you do it. I do it.
Yeah.
If I like a book, I'm like, oh my god, have you read George R.R. Martin? He's amazing. When you do that...
Everyone does that. You don't really have to say that.
But it had to start somewhere. His book was 13 years old before it was made into a TV series. So in all that time, he was, word was spreading in people in that genre. It happens the same in young adult. So teenagers and my book's a crossover book, so adults read it as well. Yeah. I get loads of emails from grandmothers who read it, because their granddaughter was reading it, and it just spreads like that. That's a slower spread. So now that my 3rd book's coming out, there's a huge difference between... My first book came out January, a year ago, so a year and a half ago. And it was just a lovely, gentle thing. A few books sold, nobody knew who I was. Yeah. The 2nd book came out, it was much bigger. That was January this year. The 3rd book comes out in August, and it just builds each time.
Cool. So you wrote, I think I was reading, it's called the first book in the series, in a summer, over the summer period. And I can sort of relate to that because I did National Novel Writing Month.
Oh, did you?
Which is November.
Yeah.
So you write 60,000 words in 30 days.
Yeah, intense.
So I actually managed to do that.
Yeah.
And even though I was working as well.
Exactly.
So how did you find the drive and the motivation to I don't know how many months the first book took, but what inspired you to just sit down and write the book in the summer?
Boredom. I had a very boring job. Sorry, boring bosses. But I was working for the government, for the Home Office, actually.
My mum has worked there.
Ah.
Yeah.
Maybe she found it as boring as I did, or maybe her job was more interesting. But it was, my job had been interesting. It had started out as a very interesting job, but then I was given a different job, a promotion, and the new job was very dull. I specialized in digital communications.
Okay.
So I started out specializing in digital communications about terrorism, which was...
That'd be interesting.
Completely fascinating. Yeah. How do you talk to the public about something so, terrifying?
That's really interesting.
How to communicate in an attack, how to get word to people quickly, using modern technology instead of the old school, which is what they did before, which was a press release. So I came in to teach, to kind of spread Twitter, Facebook, email, online comms, so people know, don't go to King's Cross Station, go here, this is safe, that isn't.
Especially, you notice how Twitter's being used with, the recent attack in Woolwich.
Exactly.
And there's different sorts, the people are utilising Twitter,
for
so
themselves.
the government has to utilise Twitter.
It's where people are, exactly. You have to be part of it just because disinformation spreads so quickly and panic.
Yeah.
So you need a rational voice. So that was fun.
Yeah.
In a dark, awful way. That was really great.
No, that sounds great.
But once it was all set up and it was working, then I got moved to more boring things. And then I was very bored. Yeah. And so I live in Surrey, and came up every day on a train. My commute altogether was about 2 hours each way. That is also boring.
Yes.
So I read loads of books on the train, which was great. I like that part.
Yeah.
But they were quite inspiring. And so having read loads of books, I thought, well, I'll try my hand at writing one. And one of the books I read was Twilight. I'd been planning to try and write an adult political thriller. And then I just couldn't quite get started because I didn't want to write about myself. And it's hard to write about something you're in the middle of without writing about yourself. So I read Twilight and thought, well, what if and at the time, the Bullingdon Club pictures had come out. David Cameron had been elected Prime Minister, and those pictures appeared of him in that secret society at Oxford. And that's a very political thing involving very young people. So, because he was basically a teenager when he was in that. So I decided I would write about that. That way I could write about politics. And also young people. That was the idea.
Cool. So from those train journeys, J.K. Rowling,
well,
wrote
exactly.
Harry Potter on the train. Maybe I should try a longer commute.
Yes, it's great for your imagination.
Just like have to be
day
inspired.
after day.
Yeah. So that's quite cool. So going back to the books, like I haven't had the chance to read them yet.
Yeah.
But I'll definitely pick up a copy.
Okay.
I have to read more books. That's one thing I actually have to do.
Yeah.
You talk about Night School being about redemption, and one of the main themes that you pick up on being that, and I think that's really interesting because that's a story arc that inspires me personally. The story of people being redeemed for their past actions that they might have thought was unforgivable from themselves. Could you explain how you use redemption in your books? Without giving too much away.
Yeah.
I realise it's a pretty loaded question.
No, it's a great question because it's a really big issue that we don't think about enough. I think I think because of things I did in my own youth, I was a kind of a wild child. My mother never forgave me. There were incidents. I always felt like the rest of my life was trying to atone for that with her, to get her to kind of realize I'd changed, I'd grown up, I was a successful person. And I wanted to write in a way about that. We can be very unforgiving, I think. The idea of forgiveness is often associated with religion, but not with morality, and I wanted to look at the morality of it. Is there something you can do that is so bad you can never be forgiven? So all of the characters in my book do bad things. Because in my opinion, we all do bad things. We just don't necessarily admit it to ourselves. And then what the book looks at, and there is an animated debate online about whether the characters should forgive things that some characters do. Not everybody agrees with where the book is headed right now, which is that forgiveness and atonement and redemption, that somebody who does something bad can atone for that and move on. It was a huge issue, a complicated issue, but one that we face every single day in our lives, and I wanted to kind of just sort of play with that.
And I think that's a really personal issue because I read debates on characters in books who do they deserve redemption for this? But I think it's personal, the choice to forgive someone is personal, and I think that comes from the writer's place, but also the readers can, mould the books and the message to what they believe in their own morality. So
we all bring our lives to every book we read.
Yeah.
So if I'm writing about an incident in a book, for example, there's a scene in it where a boy overly aggressively kisses a girl. She doesn't want it. She's fighting him off. But she's drunk, and so she's bad at fighting, so she has to be rescued. The rest of the series, that boy is trying to atone for that incident. And to me, he's obviously shaken by it, obviously sorry, obviously had too much to drink himself. There are reasons why it happened. But I will see discussion online with girls who just say she can never, there's no way that can be forgiven. That is unforgivable. But it all depends on you and what's happened in your life. In the character's life, the main character's life, she's done terrible things herself. So she's more inclined to forgiveness because she needs to be forgiven too. So she's spending her life atoning for things. So in her character arc, it makes sense. But if you have had an incident yourself where somebody terrified you in that way, you would certainly feel very strongly that this is unforgivable in a book, in a character.
Definitely. And moving on to like your main character. Obviously, she's a main character in this book, and I don't want to give a lot of things away, but how do you think you deal, like if you put yourself in Ellie's shoes, how do you think you deal with the situations? Would you make her choices?
I think I often say if I were in Ellie's shoes, I'd be in so much trouble because she's quite athletic, and one of the elements of this group that she's in is you have to be, you have to run and you've got to be strong, you've got to fight. Exactly.
Thanks, but leave me behind.
Because she has always run metaphorically and literally in her life. She's a runner, a runaway, a tearaway, and physical runner. She's strong. For her, this all makes sense. So I would be in trouble in that situation.
Just be slow.
Intellectually, I'm more like her best friend in the book. I mean, her best friend, Rachel, is sort of my stand-in in this book. Okay. If there is a stand-in for me, it's her. And she's not a runner either.
Cool. That's good. You have someone to look up to.
Exactly.